This episode of Heroes of the Horn is brought to you by our Taviran Sir Nick. The wheel weaves the pattern around this young man as it wills, whatever our plans.
Welcome to Heroes of the Horn, a Wheel of Time podcast. I am Sir Matt.
And I am Sir Ezra. Welcome to our Wheel of Time book club. The horn has sounded, and we have answered the call. Today we are covering The Great Hunt, chapters 35 through 43.
Yeah. Ez, can I just say something? Right out of the gate, okay? We always kind of sometimes I do my too long didn't read.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I just say, there is going to be a lot of thirst in this episode, okay?
Yeah.
My gosh, man. I mean, it's like, we got Loial being like, I need to get out of here before I get married.
Right.
And then you've got all the girls, talking about, well, if I don't get to marry Rand, I hope you get to marry Rand. He looks great without his shirt on. You know what I mean?
Right,
It's like,
right.
gee, many Christmas, man.
Yeah, I know. I've always loved actually like that layer to these stories. That they're either getting married or they're interested or there's some relationship that's going on, and
Right.
it's like the stakes are so high, and it's like, but yet, oh man, it's just kind of cool. It adds that extra layer where you're like, oh, they're gonna get in love or something's gonna happen. It's gonna be great. So yeah, you're right though. It's there's a lot of that in these batch of chapters, which is
Yeah.
cool.
It's great. It's all comical, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And I'm just starting to get, hey, it's just part of the series, man. Everybody's falling in love with everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, last time it was Celine, right? She's like the prettiest girl, like the most beautiful woman they'd ever seen.
Right.
I mean, geesh, man.
Right. I know. Yeah, there's more of that in this, and that'll be fun to kind of talk about. Yeah, because it's also funny because when we talk about like Rand and Egwene a little bit, which we have up to this point, and now we're in Steading Tofu, and we're talking about Loial, right, and Aerith a little bit, which is kind of interesting.
It's
walking
hilarious.
around taking a look at him. What's going on there?
I just think it's hilarious, right? Loyal's trying not to get roped down, right? I mean, he's like, right. We got to get out of here.
We got to get out of here
now, man.
Let's go.
We got to get out of here. Which is funny because that was like Rand last time, right? Where he's like, Tom, I got to get out of here, man.
Right. Yeah. You know what's funny? I do read these with a certain like that. I do laugh out loud at points like this where I'm just sort of like I'm visualizing this in my head. It's just like big, huge Ogier who's like kind of shy. You would think he's walking in here, among his people. This is a steading. He's gonna feel at home, comfortable. Maybe doesn't want to leave, but the total opposite is taking place, and you're just like, oh my, why is he acting that way? And that's exactly what our characters are wondering too. So yeah, we'll get there in just a minute. But before we do that, how you been, my friend? How's it going?
Man, I am good. This is a good batch of chapters. And again, this is something we've talked about. Is last time we were like, man, what happened to Egwene and Nynaeve? We didn't even talk about them, right? And now this group of chapters is really kind of focused on them. So we're going to be talking quite a bit about them, and so I think it's just kind of how it's going to go back and forth. So some episodes, just because the way we cover it, might be like, don't see Rand in a bit, right? Because we're dealing with some of these other characters and stuff like that. So I think it was kind of nice change of pace for this this set of chapters. Yeah,
absolutely. It really kind of just this back and forth or whatever, and depending on who's lumped with who, which parties, after which task or whatever. I mean, it was something we knew in the first book that these girls wanted to go. Well, Egwene wanted to go, and then now Nynaeve is sort of like, I'm going because Moraine, I'm coming for you type of thing. She wants to go to the tower and learn. And we talked a little bit about Nynaeve's accepted test and the testing that she went through, and that was interesting last time. And now we're going to go back there and learn a little bit about what it's like to be a novice and some of what's going on there in the tower, and talk to just sort of to get to know that setting a little bit more. And it's good. It's really good. And then it's like you just barely get to know it, and then boom, we're taken away from there and we're back on another adventure just so fast. You're like, out we go, you know? Like you would think. I mean, what we've been told up to this point is that novices, you know, for years need to be there. It's going to be grueling. You're going to be scrubbing out pots and pans and stuff. And it's like, no, I mean, they're there for a little bit and then boom, we're gone. So it's fascinating. But yeah, good change of pace. So yeah, for sure. All right, man. Hey, and we want to say to everybody out there, you know, crazy times. We hope everyone's doing well. We hope you're able to, you know, escape a little bit here into, you know, Wheel of Time in this series, and we hope you're doing well. And yeah, just stay healthy, stay safe. I today, Sir Matt, actually went out, and two things happened to me. I kind of wanted to share this because this just happened today. I decided it was about a week and a half ago to take my sister and her kids up to this spot in Lake Erie, just a nice little park. I figure we won't be near anybody. We'll be in the car all the way up there. We're not stopping to eat anywhere. You know, still being socially distanced and stuff. But we're gonna go out there and show my niece the lake and just have her, you know, have that experience, because vacation's not really gonna be that much of an option. So we go up there, and every which way I tried to get through Cleveland, it shut down, man. It shut down, and I was just sort of like, wow. So I say all that just because there's so much, you know, craziness going on in the world, and we hope everyone's doing well. But that was my day today. So this episode's a little bit, you know, it's going to be like in the latter half here of the first, but that's just because I was out there trying to have some fun this morning, and it took a lot longer than I thought it was going to drive up there and back again. But
yeah, man. I mean, geez, I just feel like I just went to the grocery store for the first time, and that was like a crazy experience, right? Because, like, you know, my girlfriend's a nurse, and so like I haven't been going anywhere because you're just easier, right? Because she's like, you know, possibly getting COVID. And now, like, the city of Portland's like shut down. You can't go anywhere because there's all this other, you know, other stuff going on. And it's just crazy times out there, man. Everything's just all. So yeah, like we said, hope everyone's out there staying safe, you know,
doing well. Yeah,
exactly.
Yep. So, and I guess, you know, with that, so here's some fun stuff. We actually had some Wheel of Time kind of news, you know, so I always think it's neat, you know, when you log into your computer, you get in, you listen to the podcast, or you go check out your Wheel of Time sources. There's some good ones out there. I'm going to throw this out here. Dragonmount.com is a really great place to go. They're covering all sort of like the news. So if you wonder where Sir Ezra goes, I go there. I also go to the Daily Trolloc. Shout out to Narg, who's been great about posting us in that Reddit. If you're into Reddit, that's a really good one to get into. There's also a great Wheel of Time Reddit as well. Sir Matt's way more involved in the Reddit community than I am, but it's those are great places. They're great sources of people are tracking down, you know, keeping track of what little tidbits have been out there. And you know, it's kind of funny, as we started to cover the show, and we started talking about where we think the show is going to go, or what they're going to cut or keep. Like, there were tidbits from like you know, a script or a cover that I don't know, like there was these little zoomed in pictures of the table with the script on it, and people were figuring out what the titles were and all this kind of stuff. It was quite interesting. So yeah, go check those sources out if you want some show updates. But a cool one that I thought would be interesting for folks to go see is this interview with Zoe Robbins, who plays. I knew that was going to happen. Oh my gosh, I've been sitting here like, for the past 30 seconds trying to get that out.
Oh, I know, it happens. Woo!
Okay, so yeah, this interview with Zoe Robbins, who plays Nynaeve. She's from New Zealand, and it was really great. And hearing them talk about the production and when they're going to go back to finish up the last 2 episodes, knowing you have 6 of the 8 done is pretty awesome. And it's giving people more time to kind of prep and prepare and make sure everything is just awesome for those final 2 episodes, and scripts are revised and everything. It's great. So go check that out. I'll try to put a link maybe down in the description of this episode so you can go listen to that interview. And then Daniel Henney on his Instagram account, I believe, or one of his social medias, was sort of doing a Q&A and was talking about the like the sets. A lot of the several of the actors, I think it's been rumored or leaked that the sets for the Wheel of Time are just phenomenal. Like they're absolute, like people I think who even worked on like maybe Game of Thrones, and they said it's just they're massive.
And what's her name? The woman who directed episode 6. Do you have that? We don't have that.
Whitfield is her last name.
Yeah, exactly.
Sally.
Yeah, exactly. She there's an interview with her where she's like, yeah, I'm not really allowed to say what it is I'm filming, but it's obviously, Wheel of Time. Right. She's like, it's an epic, 14 book series for Amazon. Like, but she can't say what it is, but she's like, it's the biggest production I've ever been involved with. She's like, we're out in this huge field. I mean, I've got actors, like over 300 people. We've got animals, all of this stuff. And it's like crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And somebody took an interest, a look at the budget. Like, this is how crazy things are, Sir Matt, right? People will call the country that is hosting this production, and they figured out that whatever they buy in that country or however much money they spend there, they get 20% back. There's like a 20%, they get off or back or money that's returned to them or something. And somehow someone did this calculation. Actually, the YouTuber is Nablus. You can go find, if you just type in Nablus on YouTube, you'll find him. Does a great job of kind of breaking this down. But it was like the budget seemingly from what they got from, I forget what government agency it is, kind of reported how much money was being used for Wheel of Time. It's like an insane amount. I mean, it's just like the tippy top, like more than Game of Thrones. And I'm like, then what we see maybe even like in season 8 of Game of Thrones. And you're like, wait,
yeah,
what?
Game of Thrones was roughly the final season was roughly like $15 million an episode.
Okay, so maybe this is a little bit, because I think they said, based upon what they were looking between like 10 to 12, but that was that wasn't an assault. That was them trying to guesstimate this based upon what money that was coming back to the studio and stuff. It was crazy.
And think about this too. I mean, the cast in any final season is always making like an insane amount of money, right?
Yeah,
because at that point, like you have to have them. They're very important. Stuff like that. So like, and the final season of Game of Thrones is like epic. They have a battle that is literally 55 nights to film.
Yeah.
This is the first season of Game of Thrones was roughly $6 million an episode for like an average before like the final season, right? So I mean that's you're talking the beginning of this. Yeah, as we've said, I keep telling people because they ask me like, because I have friends that know I podcast and stuff like that. Like, so Game of Thrones, they always think I just do like one podcast, right? And so they're always like, so what do you do now that Game of Thrones is over? I was like, well, we still do Game of Thrones, because we do the books, and then I was like, and I do Star Wars, and then I do this thing called Wheel of Time, and they're like, I don't know what that is, and I'm like, oh, trust me. In a year, you will.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
I was like, everybody will, because I think it's gonna be Game of Thrones level. I legitimately believe it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be the next Game of Thrones. And Amazon's, because Amazon wants that serious. They want Prime to be as big as Netflix, right? I mean, bigger than Netflix. And I mean, and they've done that. I mean, I shouldn't say they've done that, but Prime does improve like every year. I do feel like Prime is improved. Like now there's shows on Prime now that I watch that there never was before, right? Sure. And so
making strides. Yeah.
Exactly. Like they have legitimate shows that I feel like, I want to watch that on Prime. Like if the new season drops, right? It's like, I'm there, right? Yeah, like they have, they have Jack Ryan with guy, I always forget his name, but the guy is Jim Halpert in The Office, right?
Right.
And so like, boom, I watched 2 seasons of that. The 3rd season will probably be out in like August or September, I think, when the other ones came out. Awesome, great, I'm down. And so this would just be another addition to that thing. I mean, and so it'll be good.
Yeah, the fact that they've gone out and got the rights to this Wheel of Time, which we love, and then for you're a big fan of Lord of the Rings too, and it's that they have that. It's just like, yeah, they're ready to play ball. They're ready to really go after Netflix and other streaming services. So it's cool. It's gonna be great, and it's really good, I think, for all of us. The
exactly.
consumer.
And the market's getting more and more competitive now because, for the past couple of years, it's just been Hulu, Netflix, and Amazon Prime. Well, now there's Disney Plus and, HBO Max. Well, I mean, there's been HBO, but it was kind of its own thing. But now it's like, hey, we have a dedicated just streaming platform in HBO Max, right? And so then now you have it seems like everybody has one now. I mean, the marketplace is different. There's like a DC streaming service, there's like CW streaming service, everybody's got one. So
yeah, for sure. I also want to mention too, as you said, like a year from now, people will still be coming into hopefully the podcast, and they want to learn a little bit more about this series. They want to jump into the books or after they finish season 1. So we're here for that, and that's literally what Sir Matt and I designed this podcast for. So we're covering the show on YouTube. We're doing the reread here. By that time, we'll have a spoiler series on our Patreon feed. So just a lot of fun stuff coming down the line. So it's
exactly.
Really exciting.
Hey, message to people in the future who are listening to this after the show has come out. Hey, how you doing?
Right, exactly.
Because a year from now, when the show comes out, people are going to be like, you're right. I started listening to this because I wanted to read the books because the show came out, and so, then they're going through the episodes systematically. So shout out to you guys, and
hit Sir Matt up and say, Sir Matt, I need a book.
Hit us up, send us. It's not really, it's a raven, it's a pigeon in Wheel of Time, right? Mm-hmm. So send us one of those and say, hey, this is me. So we'll hear we'll hear from you a year from now.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. That's fun. And we get to do fun things like this. So please send us that pigeon. And by the way, I'm glad you brought that up because I've been struggling with sort of like how are messages sent, and we know that it's ravens and like Westeros, in Game of Thrones, but I was reading on ahead and there's a lot of pigeons being sent, and I'm just like, all right, gotcha. That's kind of fun. That's kind of funny to me. So I guess mild spoiler there. But here's something, though. We'll do this in the future for future listeners. Please send that pigeon to thehornofvalir@gmail.com because we'll do things like this, and you may want to respond to some of this. Lady Heather on Patreon, we got a little about to have some words here. I want to read this to Sir Matt, and I want to get his reaction. He has not heard this yet. So, because again, I try to run the Patreon, and we're trying to keep spoilers out of this as much as possible. I know sometimes things happen or whatever, but trying to capture Sir Matt's reactions here. And then sometimes we talk about our personal lives, where we're from. We just at the beginning of the show we're having like small council type of stuff, or village council, excuse me. So Lady Heather, I don't remember when we said this, but we must have dissed a certain university or state. She says,
"Oh, okay." I do that quite frequently.
Yeah. So I love you guys. I hope you know that by now, but I cannot let the diss on U of M, University of Michigan, go unchecked. I was born at University of Michigan Hospital and lived in Ann Arbor for many years. My husband was born and raised in Lansing. We are a divided house. My children have come to me and asked me to explain the ranking system. I told them on top is University of Michigan. Slightly below, is Michigan State University. Your father will try to tell you it's the other way around, but we know better. Always listen to your mom, by the way. Yeah, exactly. After that is every other collegiate team. Then, when you think there's no more, keep going down, and eventually you will find OSU. Don't bother looking, though. You don't ever want to sink that low.
First of all, it's the OSU.
Let's go!
Second of all, thank you, Lady Heather, for sending us that message.
Yeah.
No, hey, my mom was born in the state up north. Okay, I mean, so
really, I didn't know that.
Yeah. She was born in Saginaw, Michigan. So no, I mean, again, hey. I root for every Big Ten team outside of their games with The Ohio State University. Okay,
that's right.
Again, and then when it comes to bowl season, I mean, really, look, I don't actually hate them. in terms of like I think about them and I just think, like, oh God, I just can't stand them. It's
some
just
people
like,
in our state do though. Yeah,
there are people in our state. It's kind of it's every you have your rival, you have your big
right.
football rivalry, but there is no rivalry bigger than Ohio State Michigan. Okay, it's bred into us. I mean, literally. I mean, you hear people talk like. Anytime you meet somebody from Michigan, you tell them from Ohio, it's immediately just like, okay, like, see ya, like, they're like, see you later, buddy. Like, okay, like,
guys, I knew I shouldn't have read this to Sir Matt, because he'll just go down this. Like, here we go. Like,
it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. But no, hey, in bowl season, I'm always rooting for every Big Ten team. I mean, let's go. You gotta
go.
Yeah, because it helps us out. It's good in the future and stuff like that. So,
and there go our SEC listeners.
That's fine.
Right.
Okay,
hey,
that's just
you calm down over there. I'm a big UK guy. I like Kentucky. All right.
Hey, I like Florida. Florida. I like. Florida.
Yeah, sure.
I like Florida.
Yeah, we're backpedaling now. Yeah. No, we love you guys. We really do, and it's all for fun, and it's just kind of neat. So that's the kind of cool stuff, and we just do. I think if you get a chance to listen to our kind of extended edition and maybe spoiler series, where I really do want to bring on Sir Nick. I think later in the summer I'm going to try to get him on and talk to him a little bit more. And this, by the way, shout out to him. This episode's brought to you by Sir Nick. Thank you so much. He doesn't trust Aes Sedai, so part of me is sort of like, I'm with you, but I'm also against you, Sir Nick. I don't know what's going on there, but we'll talk more about that later. But the extended edition series is a lot of fun. It's more relaxed, and you're probably wondering how can it get more relaxed than a conversation about OSU and Michigan. But
you'll find out. Hey, and let me just say, hey, real quick, one final point on that. If you're listening to this because a year from now, because the show came out, don't worry. We will have beaten them again for like the 13th, 14th time, in a row. I don't know. I've lost count, but just saying.
Wow, we're gonna have to. Oh boy, that'll be fun in the fall. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Oh shoot,
it will.
All
be.
right.
Yeah,
it will be. Yeah. People are like, oh, I can't. What if there's somebody out there who's just like, I absolutely. Up until this point,
tons of people hate. Tons of people.
They hate Ohio State. They hate Ohio State.
And I will say this. It's like, as a fan.
Doing?
Here, let me redeem us. Okay, as a fan, I totally agree that we are the worst fans
terrible. We're terrible.
Yeah, obnoxious. We're just totally obnoxious.
It's ridiculous.
As you can tell. Yeah.
Here's something funny though. I guess in some, if you think you're going to go far and find there are other tons of great Wheel of Time podcast creators, etc. But if you're a hero of the horn, you're going to stay here. Exactly. But there's a lot of creators from Ohio. I've been surprised as I've gotten into this community more how many people are kind of from Columbus, which is really interesting. So. Anyway, all right, we say all that just for some fun. I just wanted to kind of address that with Lady Heather. Thank you so much. She's honestly fantastic, and she's on Twitter. You can find her there. You can come over on Patreon. By the way, that's free. That's open for anybody. You can go in there and do like our chapter kind of like discussion threads. Anybody can go in there. You can create an account for free and just start having kind of conversations and interact with some of those patrons over there. And those comments get read on the show. A lot of the time. So we kind of go through, find ones that aren't spoiler, and some of them, if they're directed towards Sir Matt or like a reaction that he had to the book series, I go in and read those, and even go back to some of the ones. Some people have gone back, actually, Sir Matt, and we've had some new comments on like, the Eye of the World. So I actually think at one point I'm going to go back and try to find some of those that we never did talk about, and maybe do a little exclusive kind of, free thing where we talk about those comments and get your reaction to some of those, which I think would be pretty neat. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm down.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we kind of did our too long didn't read version at the top of the show there. So we are we're ready to jump into this batch of chapters. It's going to be fun. Why don't you just take us through, I guess, sort of a quick little chapter 35 through, I think, 43. The outlines there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, chapter 35, the group visits Steading Tofu. Chapter 36, the group try to use the way gate outside Steading Tofu, but find Machin Shin instead. Alar tells them of a portal stone nearby. 37, Rand takes them through a portal stone and seems to live 1,000 possible lives. They spend months in the passage, which this was actually my favorite chapter of the of the bunch. Certainly, I think it's the most interesting. 38, Landrin tells Egwene and Nynaeve that Rand is in danger and she can take them to Tommen Head to help him. 39, Egwene and Nynaeve tell Elaine and Min what Landrian told them, and all four go through the ways with Landrian. Yep. 40, on arrival in Tommen Head, Landrian tries to hand over them to the Shanshan, but Nynaeve is too strong, and she and Elaine escape. 41, the group pass through Tommen Head, and Rand encounters Balsamon and Teleon Riyadh. 42, Nynaeve works out how to open an Adam with the power, and Egwene is punished for channeling without permission. That's a big kind of Egwene thing. Right. Yeah, and let's just say she's not named Egwene after that. 43, Nynaeve hires Doman to take them from Falmouth once they have rescued Egwene.
Yeah, so a lot going on there. It's really these two. Two things are happening. We're sticking with Varen, Ingtar, Matt, Rand, Perrin, Loial. That's sort of our main group. Throw Huron in there. I don't know if I mentioned him or not. Uno, Ingtar, so on. And we're going to Aestheting. That's where we're headed now. We just had that whole everything went down in Kyrian, and we're moving now into Aestheting because we're trying to figure out, like, okay, so the ways were blocked there at Lord Barthanes' manor, right? We went down. There was possibly a way gate there, but Machin Shin was there. The Black Wind was there. We couldn't get through. So now we're thinking, all right, let's go to the next closest place. Loial, where do we go? We need to go to the Steading, find another way to catch up with Padan Fain. And it's like, first of all, Ingtar. Have I said Ingtar is like my favorite character? Like and again, I am way far ahead right now in the series, so I always love coming back to this, and I love that we're here right now. So I'm gonna just kind of like go nuts about Ingtar, but like I just love him so much. But he is desperate to get the horn, and he wants to get the horn. He's even talking about, like, I'm going back to Kyrian. I'm gonna go back to Kyrian and figure out, like, that's where we last knew it was at. Pick up the trail there, see if I can figure out some more, information about where it's at. But for now, he stayed with this group, and we're in the Steading. And as we said at the top of the show, Loial, not so much a fan of going to the Steading. I mean, and I'll remind folks, what do you think about this, Sir Matt? He left without permission.
Yeah, he does. Okay. And I gotta say, so, especially because just where we left last time, like, they're going to the Steading, and you're just thinking, okay, whatever, like, we're just going, because we've already been to a Steading, right? Like, we've already been to one, and so it's like, all right, well, like, why would that,
what's the big deal? Yeah.
Well, yeah, what's the big deal, right? I mean, I don't feel like we should be at all worried about going back to a Steading. So, but then we get there, and really the biggest deal to me is first we meet a female Ogier, and it's like, okay, like, here we go. And, it's like, it's just, this chapter it's another chapter in just Loial is kind of this, like, comic relief character, but he's not like clumsy or anything. It's just more like he's you really start to see just how kind of, like, young he is, right? Because you don't think about him as being young, but sure. I guess just, like, in his, like, when he's talking and like unexperienced, right? I guess is kind of the thing. It's just so funny, right? Because he's like, you just imagine this, like, big, huge, monstrous guy, right? And it's like when you watch an old cartoon, right? And it's like, it's like when you look at it with an elephant with a mouse, right? Like, here's this big, huge elephant, right? And it's walking, and here's this tiny little mouse, and the elephant, like, gets up on its hind legs, and it's all scared. And, like, that's just kind of like the comedy of Loial, right? Yes. And he's just he's this big guy. You look like he could take out, like a full army of men, and he's really, like, this big baby, and, like, and it's so funny.
Yeah, it is, and it's like he's knowledgeable too. So it's odd, right, to go from, like, Moraine turning to him and saying, "Guide us through the ways. Tell us what you know about X, Y, and Z." And then it's like, then we're going back to a place, as I said, where this should be a place of comfort for him. But then we're reminded, oh yeah, he didn't ask permission to leave, he
Right.
could be in trouble. And you also think, so this is not his steading. There are multiple steadings, which is kind of neat. You know, now we're seeing these steadings with Ogier and like these elders, which is pretty neat. We learn a little bit about their culture. And he's totally worried that word has gotten out that like maybe other members of other steading are looking for him, and that if he's around other Ogier, they might, you know, report him, like report his last known location or something, or make him stay, you know. So that is funny. It is really, really interesting. So I guess I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So this took me a second. I remember when I first was reading to think about this, but he's talking about the longing. Do you remember that when he was talking about how like when an Ogier is away from
yeah,
right,
which is interesting. They didn't really they like briefly just kind of talked about it, right? Is it like, so the Ogier are they is it like I guess for me, like, think about like, I'm trying to think of like, you know, like an animal, like I'm trying. What's an animal? Like what's an animal that can go out of water for a bit, but it's like got to go back into it?
Gotcha. Yeah. And it's out of its environment, needs to kind of, it can't survive.
Go back. Yeah. Let me look.
I got you. That is kind of it. I mean, to really simplify it, it's like if you're away too long, well, then this longing kind of sets in, and the way Loial explains it is that he would know, because they are worried. Matt, Perrin, and Rand are a little bit worried that like, hey, Loial, are you okay? Like, you've been away for a bit, like, and he says that he'll know when that happens. So, but I just thought it was interesting because it's a tie-in to sort of like the consequences of the breaking of the world. Go all the way back to the prologue of the Eye of the World, and that breaking done by Lews Therin. And it's like, okay, so because there's this taint on saidin and the male half of the source, that men went crazy, they channeled, they broke the world, it's changed things, it's moved people around, that hurt the Ogier in this way. That I think they go, and I have to, again, let me go back and refresh my memory. They called it the exile. So they were kind of searching for the steading, hadn't been able to find it. The desire to know the steading again is what they call the longing, which is interesting. So we got to keep an eye on Loial, because it's just something that we know he's outside of the steading, and he wanted to go see what the world was like, but yet is, could potentially in the future be affected by this. So, I mean, any Ogier could, you just have to, when you're away too long, there's that almost like a calling, like this urge to go back. So, yeah, he says, I will know it when it comes. Right.
Yeah. And it's just cool, because now we have like another, you have a longing, right? Now we just have another kind of thing that makes it seem like, oh no, so the steadings they just have to go back to, right? And the steadings themselves are just really interesting, because they talk about how dark friends can't come in here, right? And so like we're safe in here, nothing can hurt us inside of a steading. And so I can't remember, because when we first went there, I don't think that they talked about like kind of like why they're powerful, did they?
No, so going back to the Eye of the World, when they first go in there,
which is like towards Elias. The middle, right? It's like, well, yeah, I guess that is, Elias. They go there with Elias, but then,
yeah. So when they seek shelter there because they're being attacked by the ravens, I think, and as they go in there, there's almost like this. Almost like you got goosebumps, like you could tell there was a change, like something was a little bit different. Perrin mentions that. And I think Elias says to them they're safe there, and that they won't be pursued by Shadowspawn, and that they won't enter there. So we know a little bit about the steading. We learn a little bit more here, in that those individuals will not enter a steading, and that's just not. So we're good. We're okay here. So as Rand actually enters, and this happens right here, so we might as well talk about it. Rand enters, and he is actually unable to channel. He says that. He says, let's see. So I think it's Perrin is asking if wolves could enter the steading. Loial says that only creatures of the shadow are unwilling, I think is the word, maybe, to enter a steading. Like, they don't want to. They're reluctant. Not that they totally can't, but that there's almost like a ward against them, essentially. They don't want to do that. So, let's see. The Aes Sedai are also a little bit reluctant to go there, and that's because they cannot touch the true source inside of the steading. And it's interesting how each of them kind of handles that. So Matt is like, yes, let's get there. I want to get there because that's fine with me. I don't, this whole people having access to the true source. Like, he seems most, what Rand is going through seems to really, not that he's distancing himself, but like he's the one who's sort of like really keeping an eye on Rand, saying, you're going to go crazy. He's very blunt about how he's, reacting to the idea that Rand can channel the power. So Matt wants to get in there. He's good with that. Varen is cool with it. I mean, you're going into a peaceful, a steading with a bunch of Ogier. So I think it's sort of like, what's the threat in there? You know what I mean? Like, no one going into this steading thought there was a threat. And ironically, it's the Aiel. It's the who are there unexpectedly, and they see the Shannarans, Inktar, and Huron, and they veil themselves and get ready to like attack. So none of that is supposed to go on inside of a steading. Like, essentially, I think they even said they told Inktar to keep some of his men outside of the steading. I think see if I can find that real quick. But yeah, I think they had to stay outside because they only brought a certain number in, and like just with their weapons, it's a place of peace. So Varen's not going to be that worried about coming in here and not being able to channel. Now, Rand says that he felt sort of like a relief because there's a relief and a longing for him, because once you touch the true source, like, you want to have access to it. It would be like in Star Wars, like in the Force. Like, if all of a sudden you don't have the ability to touch the Force anymore, like the Force is life, and it's this energy, and without it, it'd be like not having your caffeine. You just feel a little dull, like you don't have the same energy. You're drained in a sense. And in an odd way for Rand, that's a good thing, because there's the Dark One has sort of tainted the male half of the true source, the power. So that's kind of a problem for him, but it's also like a blessing. So yeah, that's, I get in a gist, sort of what's going on with the steading and with the dynamics as they enter it. And so we did get more about that than we got with Elias, because we have an Aes Sedai and we have these channelers who we know can channel, and we're sort of realizing like, oh, okay, like this is why there's a big effect on that. And so when Loial originally explained the ways, remember when, like, back in Eye of the World, he explains that the ways were a gift to the Ogier because they had sheltered men who could channel. Men during the breaking of the world, they took men in, and men found relief there. They weren't going mad. The madness would essentially leave them. They could live out some years in peace, but eventually all of them ended up leaving the steading for some reason or another, or were found out by Aes Sedai, by female Aes Sedai. And yeah, so he kind of talks about why the effects that it would have on a male channeler, and we kind of forget about that, and then it's brought up again here, and we're like, oh, okay, yeah, so, and that's tough because that's been a long time ago, and that's one of those things where there is a reward in that, like, a layer or a thread was laid down in this book, and it will come up again in the next one, and then we'll be reminded. We might skip a book, and then there's another book where you're reminded of that. Again, you get a little bit more information. You know what I mean? It's like breadcrumbs, but you just keep getting more and more and more. And eventually
right,
you're like,
about what they are and why they're important. Yeah. And yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, it's just because, yeah, I mean, as you said, I mean, the first time, now it's like we're learning this new thing about, oh, wow, like the longing, right? And that they gotta do something. And it's not like, I mean, we're also, the Ogier in themselves are relatively still like kind of a new thing, because the only one we've met was Loial, yeah, and now we're meeting all these other ones, yeah. So it's pretty interesting here. But okay, so Yeah, I guess right. So they're there, and they're kind of like regrouping, right? And I gotta talk about it. What is her name? The
Aerith.
Aerith, yeah,
Aerith,
yeah. And it's just funny, right? Because it's like the first thing we see is this female, like we meet this female Ogier, and she's like talking to Loial, and I sent you messages. I'm like, I think this girl's into Loial.
Yeah, exactly. No, that So your initial thought is like, yeah, she's into Loial, and I think Loial says he starts to kind of explain to Mat and Perrin, like what could happen, and you're like this arrangement, this marriage arrangement. Right. And they at first think like that's odd, that's strange, but then they all start to kind of think, well, now wait a second, like the phrase that we get with Rand and Egwene all the time is that that they were all but promised to each other. You know what I mean? So like it was never said out loud, but it seemed to be arranged. And then they start to kind of think about just how things work between the women's circle and the village council back in Emond's Field, and it's like maybe we do have some of that going on back in the Two Rivers. So they first kind of get on Loial a little bit about it, but then they quickly realize like, nah, we kind of have the same sort of dynamic, I guess, where we're from. So just in a slightly different way. But yeah, so what's explained is that if a young girl, or I'm sorry, a young Ogier sees, Loial, may actually say to her mother that she's interested, and then her mother will contact his mother, and then they'll make this arrangement. And I think he says he has no say in it, so it's, and the irony, we'll just jump right to it, is at the end of this, he walks away with a flower.
Right.
From Aerith, right? Like she's put one. Yeah. So you're like, oh, okay. All right. I see.
Yeah. I mean, it was just, he's just like, he's like, what's he say? He's like, we have to, he's like, if I stay, right, he gets married, right, that he won't be able to leave until he has gray in his beard, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, he does say that. Yeah.
He's like, well, we can stay or we can travel the ways.
Yeah, and exactly. Yeah, so he's like, here we go. The one thing I wanted to read, so just from that chapter, and then we'll move on to the next one, is when they first meet the Aiel. So Rand studied the Aiel with an uneasy curiosity. They were what too many people had tried to tell him he was. Two of the women were mature, the other little more than a girl, but all three were tall for women. Their short cut hair ranged from reddish brown to almost golden. With narrow, shoulder-length tail left long at the back. They wore loose breeches tucked into soft boots, and all their clothes were some shade of brown or gray or green. He thought the garments would fade into rock or wood almost as well as a warder's cloak. So, like, that was kind of like we're getting more description on the Aiel and who they are, and this keeps popping up, Sir Matt. It keeps popping up that he looks like them. So what do you think about that? I guess right now as things stand, like the idea that Rand looks like them, but he's been told this by the Amyrlin. He's been told this by like his friends. Now that they've seen Aiel, are sort of like, yeah, you look like, I mean, like before it wasn't brought up, but now it is. And now it's more and more like you look like one of them. And it's actually alarming to the point where like Aiel are not known to be in this land. This is not their land. They're from, like across the spine of the world, in sort of this desert land, and we've heard about an Aiel war, but that's it really. We don't meet many of these characters, but every time we do, there's always a connection made back to Rand.
Right. Yeah. Just because they look similar. Right. Well, and I mean, this now is like roughly the first time we're beginning to meet them. Right. I mean, we hadn't really met any Aiel before, but they've just kept saying it. And now that we actually meet them, I think it's a little more apparent to see that they do in fact look like Rand. Because it's just different. It's just different. Like when it's like, oh, we've heard about them, but now that we're meeting them, it's like, oh, okay, well, I mean, they really do look like Rand.
Yeah, and there's a struggle for Rand where he's like, okay, my father, I mean, when their farm is attacked and he's taking him back to Edmund's Field and Moraine's going to heal him, I mean, he has that fever dream where he's basically like talking about how he, like how his wife wanted a child and all this stuff. And so he's like, now, wait a second, maybe, so are you saying that like Tam is not my father? He keeps saying over and over, he's my father. He is. Like, that's why he holds on desperately to the heron marked blade. My father gave me this, it's that reminder. But more and more, we keep hearing, and it just, logically, I think you would say, well, he doesn't look like them, and he looks like these people, and people keep making that connection, and then you get the story with Tam, so there's something there. I guess we'll just keep
Right.
kind of talking about it, and as you say, once we're introduced to these people and we see their description and we see how they look, and how that matches Rand, it just sort of becomes more apparent that there's something going on between him and these people. So,
yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, now with that, let's move into, we can just kind of move along here. Really, this next chapter kind of goes with that first one. So into chapter 36, we essentially decide, and I'll set this up, and then I'm going to get your thoughts on this. We're like to me, chapter 36 is more just about, we go to the council. Loial is again kind of like, they're told to take him back to Steading Shangtai or promise that they would when this is all done and over. So they definitely noticed him, right? He's been noticed. And then they decide, they show them what happens when you travel the ways, and that the black wind can have this effect. They bring out one like this Ogier who is drooling, who can barely walk, is supported by other Ogier who has encountered the black wind in the ways, and they're warning them to not take it. Matt Perrin and Rand all decide, no, we need to travel the ways. It's like very important that we get to Almouth Plain, that we get to Tolman Head, and meet up, try to track down the horn and the dagger. Matt, by the way, I forgot to mention this. You said this. Is that Matt seems to be getting what?
His more and more sick, right? Even though he was supposed to have been, healed. I have, let me see here. Basically that, just that he seems like he's still ill.
Yeah, and the healing that Varen is doing, or did beforehand, and even after, it doesn't seem to be doing much at all. So that's just, the urgency increases because that's their friend, and they really need to get the dagger back and then take him to Tarvalin, where he can be healed and separated from it. Yeah,
because I think Varen's tried to heal him like several times, right? And then we know, Moraine tried to heal him, or Moraine does, heal him, right? In the I guess in the middle of Eye of the World, and she says, even though she says like I won't be able to fully heal him, so
right. So that's the desperation. Again, Dark Friends and Podon Fane having the Horn of Valyria is not a good thing either. So we have to risk it. And they decide that, okay, we're going to go down here. We're going to go to the Waygate. They're shown there by the elders. And the Black Wind is back.
Yeah.
Majin Shin is there.
Yeah.
And you're sort of like, Rand knows it. It's very upsetting to Varen. Like, wait a second, we because I think they think at this point that the Black Wind is just sort of like at random. It just roams. It doesn't really have any intellect. It's no one's controlling it. It's not being, but it seems like it can't be everywhere all at once. So of all the places it could be, it happens to be at the door in Kyrian, and now it's there again here in this steading, or just outside of this steading. Like, that seems kind of there's a lot. Is that coincidence? Is that
no? I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, they talked about it just being a win, but I think it might be something. It might be more than just
there's like voices and screaming.
Yeah,
and
like
nasty.
it might be alive essentially.
Yeah, for sure. So there's something to that, and it limits their choices. It's Huron who says, "What about the old portal stones?" And never forget, too, that Varen is of the brown Aja. I don't mention this enough, but like one of the things that's subtly mentioned throughout the Great Hunt and the Eye of the World, well, actually more just the Great Hunt, is that Varen, being of the a brown, is very curious and very much into knowledge and understanding things. So things like this are interesting to her. You know, that the wind is here, and then the idea that we have a portal stone. What's a portal stone? You know, let's go check that out. And you think back to Selene, who you mentioned, and Rand's traveling of the use of the portal stone earlier in this book. Now we kind of understand what that is. And we understand some of the markings, and like Varen and he will talk about that. But we decide to basically go use a portal stone, and they're taken there by the Ogier. So, and this is what you said was probably one of your favorite chapters. It's actually, do you remember in the Eye of the World, I kept saying I cannot wait until you get to a particular moment because it opens a lot of doors. It is this chapter. It's chapter 37. It's when Rand goes there and he takes them through the portal stone.
Yeah.
And they seem to live these like multiple lives.
Well, it's crazy, yeah, because up until this point, Rand's had all these weird dreams, right? Like he's had all these dreams where he sees, all of these things, but this one's kind of different because he is seeing, potential lives, right? I mean, like different endings, different lives, right? And Nynaeve, remember, in her trials saw this, but this is obviously something different because at the end of it, we find out that they were in there for months, not just it wasn't just like a one night dream, but in this kind of thing, right? This vision he sees, Rand's like sees tons of life. Sees a life where he marries Egwene, right? Like he sees a life where he's a carpenter. He sees, all of these different things, and it's really interesting to see like, what this is, what this will happen, right? And then Varen realizes like, this was like we missed a lot of time, like this is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So let me just read a little bit about each of these, I guess. So this is a chapter I do kind of want to slow down on this one, and maybe we'll
that's
see
fine.
Where we get with the other ones.
Exactly, yeah.
So this one, as they're looking at the symbols, and Rand kind of picks a symbol that it's like an arrow shooting out of a circle, which is like it's escaping and getting away, and he kind of thinks that's sort of like me. I kind of want to that's what I want to do, and so at random, he picks that, and that's important to all of this. He didn't really know what to pick, but he randomly picks that, and he makes some kind of connection with his own desire to what he sees on the stone, because they don't really know how to use it. I mean, Varen she's actually covering for him and saying that she'll use the portal stone because, again, she was there with Moiraine and so on when they were talking about the Dragon Reborn, and she's one of the Aes Sedai that know he's a male channeler that we are not gentling like we did with Logain, who we'll get to in just a little bit. So, the symbol shimmered, flickered, and then Varen says, "Something is happening. Something." The world flickered. The iron lock spun across the farmhouse floor. So instantly there's like a break. If you're reading this, if you're listening, there's a slight pause, but if you're reading, you'll see a kind of a break. Which indicates that like something's up here. This is important. The lock spun across the farmhouse floor. Rand dropped the hot tea kettle as a huge figure with ram's horns on its head loomed in the doorway with the darkness of winter night behind it. So we're back to winter night. Tam is shouting, "Run!" His sword flashed and the Trolloc toppled, but it grappled with Tam as it fell, pulling him down. So there's this fight that takes place, and they die.
Yeah. There's a lot of death in all of these visions Rand sees, by the way.
Yeah, so he and his father lose the fight to the Trollocs, and then in italicized is... So let me read this. "So, Father," Rand screamed, clawing his belt knife from its sheath. He threw himself over the table to help his father, but screamed again as the first sword ran through his chest. Blood bubbled up into his mouth, and a voice whispered inside his head, "I have won again, Lews Therin." Flicker. So, okay. I have won again, Lews Therin. It's different. It's a voice inside of his head saying that to him. And then we have this flicker, and we move on to another life. This goes on for months, Rand struggled to hold the symbol, dimly aware of Varen's voice is not. And then so you can see time slowing down there. She's still finishing this just in the time it takes for her to spit out a sentence, he's lived several lives.
Yeah.
Does that, you know what I mean? So like you can see that they saw thousands. I mean, this is a crazy thing that's going on here. He's seeing all sorts of possibilities. But the next one is pretty interesting. Rand was happy after he married Egwene. Wait a second. Rand was and that's what I did when I was reading, by the way, the first time. I was like, Rand was happy after he married Egwene and tried to not let the moods take him. The times when he thought there should have been something more, something different. News of the world outside came into the two rivers with peddlers and merchants come to buy wool and tobacco. Always news of fresh troubles, of wars, and false dragons everywhere. There was a year when neither merchant nor peddler came, and when they returned the next, they brought word that Arthur Hawkwing's armies had come back, or their descendants, at least. The old nations were broken, it was said, and the world's new masters, who used chained Aes Sedai in their battles, had torn down the White Tower and salted the ground where Tar Valon had stood. There were no more Aes Sedai. So, anyway, I wanted to get your thoughts, just like as when you were reading that. I think you sent me a text where you were kind of
there's a lot. I'm just going to read some of the summary if that's okay.
That's fine.
That's okay. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, let me just get through this whole kind of thing here, right? Okay, so Rand has married Egwene and stayed in the two rivers, but is sometimes taken by bad moods. They have several children, and Tam dotes upon his grandson and granddaughters. Invading descendants of Arthur Hawkwing have long since taken control of the entire continent and completely destroy all Aes Sedai. Egwene becomes the wisdom and is well known for her miraculous cures. She is not able to completely heal Rand from frequent sickness and depression. However, many years later, Egwene passes away, and in his old age, Rand develops a wasting sickness. Trollocs and other creatures from the Blight begin a campaign upon all the lands south of the Blight. During their series of attacks, Rand joins the defending forces, though he is old and several of his fingers have fallen off due to his wasting disease. He has a moment in the final battle where he feels completely enraged by the sight of the banner of the forces of darkness, and he feels especially called to fight them. While Rand is busy firing arrows at the approaching forces, in the distance, a Trolloc runs through him, and Rand dies. Rand is inconsolable when Egwene mysteriously dies at a very young age. Rand's father Tam teaches him swordplay and decides to send Rand to Ilion to see if he can get work as a soldier there. Rand has his money stolen in Baerlon, meets Min, who he is initially attracted to, but finds she tells him too many strange things and runs away from her to Caemlyn. Rand flounders around until he is able to get a job in the Queen's Guard. Once a great while, Rand has strange feelings toward the daughter heir Elaine. Feelings are improper coming from a soldier towards a future queen. Rand realizes that he has the ability to channel. He keeps the ability a closely guarded secret, but he carefully uses it to win on the battlefield, becoming a leader of the guard. Rand becomes sick with a wasting disease. Descendants of Arthur Hawkwing invade, and in the massive battle that ensues, Rand hurls lightning and fire and is killed by an errant bolt of lightning. And this is where I kind of texted you, because then it just kind of talks, then it just kind of, instead of being a little more detailed about something, it just kind of talks about a bunch. It's like Rand was a soldier, a shepherd, a beggar, a king, a farmer, a gleeman, a sailor, a carpenter. He was born, lived, and died in an Aiel. He died mad. He died rotting. He died of sickness, accident, age, 100 lives, more, so many he could not count them. And then they all land with a thud at their destination. Yeah. And so it's just crazy. I mean, he sees like almost every possible kind of outcome. And I was just thinking kind of about like the pattern in the wheel, right? Like, I mean, this is something, this is clearly something going on with the wheel, showing Rand anything and everything, right? I mean, it's kind of like what my thought about it was, because, like we've talked about, like the pattern, right? And how sometimes, I mean, clearly there have been other dragons before, right? But they obviously didn't work or whatever. And when Balzamon talks to Rand, like we talk a lot about Luce Theron, right? And we talk about like these, many, I have fought you hundreds of times, and all of these types of things, and so generation after generation after generation after generation, and so sometimes the pattern, sometimes you're this, sometimes you're that, so so I thought maybe like something's going on with the wheel, like of time itself.
Right. I know. Yeah. So. Yeah, and the phrase "I have won again, Lews Therin" is said over and over and over again. And then you get that flicker, different lives lived. So yeah, it's crazy. What's interesting is that in each of those, like, you can see their variations. Like, there's some similarities, and then some are completely different. But like, you almost wonder in that thread where he lives a life as a soldier, a shepherd, a beggar, a king, a farmer, a gleeman. Is he's still at the core a man who can channel? Even in the first one, he has a wasting sickness. Like you can tell there are people who maybe like they can channel, but they don't even know it. They don't even know what they're doing, and possibly they get sick from it. Another cool connection here, I guess, is that Moiraine had told Nynaeve that about why other wisdoms died at such a young age, because they were doing things with the power and they weren't guided. And then that can turn on them in a sense. They need to be guided, and that it's a lot of them, most of them, will die, and that Nynaeve is kind of the exception to that. It's a surprise that she's lived this long, and that she's, has some control over the power or whatever she can do, her channeling ability. So that was interesting, because Egwene becomes wisdom and goes through that, but then dies at a young age, and you're like, what? So there's these slight variations with some common threads in there as well. So you can almost see, like, the way I look at it, and I don't really know, and again, I would love for people to go to the discussion thread on Patreon. Let us know what you really thought of this chapter and what this means for the Wheel of Time and what it means for these characters and stuff. Because to me, Perrin comes out of it and he says, what does he say? He says something like, he doesn't feel that there were that many choices. He feels like it all seemed to like end the same. Like there might be slight variations in what we could do, but ultimately we ended up at about the same spot. Like, whether you were a beggar, a king, a farmer, you ended up having the urge to fight the shadow and channel the power if you're Rand. You go back to what Loial said, and talking about ta'veren, and talking about like the idea that maybe you would want to be, like the difference between, well, I want to be a farmer versus a fisherman. Okay, not that big of a deal, whatever. But you want to be king. I always think that's kind of interesting, because then this portal stone shows us that there's more to that conversation, and it's way more complex even than maybe what Loial told us. So yeah, it's just crazy, and it affects these individuals. They come out of this, and Inktar is talking about, again, even a more fierce urgency to find the horn and walk in the light. Varen is trying to heal everybody. Mat seriously doesn't want her to touch him. Perrin seems to be like the most, which is interesting. He comes out of this, he seems to be sort of like, things seem to be just inevitable. Like, he didn't seem to be that affected by it. But yeah, it's... They all seem to have handled it in a different way. I guess when you see all these different possibilities, and you see like, oh my gosh, I was attracted to men. I possibly had, as a soldier, I had feelings for Elaine. Multiply that by like 1,000. They don't really, had we have seen all 1,000 lives, maybe we would have saw like, oh, like he becomes a soldier more often than he becomes a farmer or a beggar. Right. Like maybe he was only a beggar twice out of the 1,000 times, but maybe he was a king once, but he was a soldier for most. So that's the thing that Robert Jordan doesn't show us there, is that this is a pattern that's being woven, and we're trying to create. The Wheel of Time is spinning it out, and it's trying to create something, a reality that we know. And so we kind of get to see a little bit of that. I don't know. They've always been sort of a mystery to me, and I know people have looked into it more than I have for sure, so I'd love to get more comments on this event, because it's, as a reader, the first time through, I remember going, oh my, this is just, wow, there's so much going on. This is crazy. This is like higher level power stuff. Like, this is crazy.
This is like something I'm going to have to come back to later, right? It's like,
right. Right. And I remember saying to myself, don't forget about that. What does it mean? I remember even marking it in my book originally and going back and saying, okay, like, is there something that we're learning from this?
Right.
And, just trying to figure it out. So, yeah, overall, pretty freaking cool. Like twice in Rand's story, it's rumored that that Arthur Hawkwing and his armies have returned. And then it's like, well, no, more specifically, his descendants have returned. That's mentioned twice in that. So, again, why do we keep hearing about Arthur Hawkwing and his descendants? Well, like that's something that I think to pay attention to, right?
Yeah, and so I guess kind of question about this is it. Does it have? I mean, maybe we don't. Maybe you don't. Maybe we don't know as readers, or maybe it'll be too big of a spoiler. Is Rand like this whole thing happens because Varen says, "Well, like I don't know how to. I've never used a portal stone, right?" And so Rand's like, "Well, all right, I'm gonna do it." And then he like picks a specific symbol, and so I'm like, is it something to do with obviously Rand using the power, but like the power and the combination of a portal stone and the specific symbol he picks?
Yeah.
Why this like whole thing happens?
Right. Why is it different from their first experience with the portal stone? Right. Is that that's a great question. Right.
Yeah.
So is it it's like, did you pick the right symbol? Which one did you?
Because he picks a symbol. He picks a symbol with like an arrow, which has like broken free of a circle.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And so it's like when you go back to like Selene, looking at the those symbols, it's kind of like, okay, so what? I mean, she seems to have more knowledge about those, and so later on, this is picked at random. We don't really know what exactly he picked out in that first kind of, like we don't really even know how he used or accessed the portal stone to begin with.
Exactly.
So, which is interesting. But yeah, I mean, so from what so it's a way in which you can travel, because clearly they travel a great distance. But then they also kind of saw alternate realities, and I think they're kind of a mystery. I don't really necessarily know. So
okay.
Again, people who maybe know more about it and want to chime in. I don't even know if it's necessarily spoiler. What I know is that I always think of like in terms of what a writer is trying to do with like a literary device or whatever. And there's something going on here. You're telling us more about the wheel. You're telling us something about the pattern. You're telling us something about alternate realities, possibly alternate, like different lives, different variations of things. So clearly that's what we just read about. And then should I remember this for later? And I think the answer is yes. But then to get into the nitty gritty of what a portal stone is, it just seems to still be kind of a mystery. And it's something from the Age of Legends. Oftentimes these characters are, well, I think actually, and I could be wrong about, maybe there is more explicit stuff on the portal stone later on, but I think one of the like when I think of that, and I think of like some of the ancient things that we have in our world that we don't really know, what was that used for? Why do they have that? Why is that there? What are these great wonders? Like, and I sometimes think about the portal stone. I think, well, maybe we know some of its functionality. We know that it's significant in some way, but not much more than there's just little that's known.
Right.
I guess.
Right. Okay.
Which actually happens a lot about a couple different like artifacts and things.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on ahead a little bit. Okay. So now I guess maybe we can kind of bulk some of this stuff, because now we really move into really the next like wave of chapters, which is we're moving into kind of Egwene, Nynaeve back to Tar Valon, right? Flame of Tar Valon. Which by the way, kind of shout out to our YouTube channel. We've been breaking down how we think the episodes are going to go for the TV show. And right here, I mean, this is one of the things you and I said was, I think they're going to kind of separate some of the, like maybe that episode 5 and episode 6. And here we go. Cause this is the title of the, potential episode 6 of the show.
Yeah.
Right. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. We're in the middle toward the ends of Great Hunt. So I think it's maybe looking a little more, just like, right. Okay. So, yeah. So this is where, Egwene and Nynaeve are told, right, that Rand is in danger, right? And so now we're kind of focusing back, right, again on Egwene, Nynaeve, the Aes Sedai, their training, Elaine, right? And, this is definitely kind of interesting, right? That there's, Elaine kind of bursts in, right, and says like King Galdrian's dead and there's a civil war, like, because
yeah, right. All that news is coming in, and they're learning more about what's happening. War is breaking out and how troubling that is, and everything. Yes, for sure. So, and we were just there, so we kind of understand over in Kyrian, like, oh boy, okay, there's a civil war there now. What? Rand, Matt, and Perrin just left there. Tom's all ticked. They killed his girl. Like that's. Yeah. I mean, he's angry. So that's sort of what Elaine is letting them in on, and just sort of a remind. I mean, Elaine is here in the tower and is now kind of talking with Egwene and Nynaeve, and just sort of a reminder, like that's Queen Morghase's daughter heir to Andor.
Okay, so one question: does this take place during the 4 months or after?
How did I know you were going to ask me that? And I actually don't. I was actually.
Or does it? Does it not really matter?
I got to look it up. I don't actually.
Because they don't.
I have a feeling that it takes place during. I have a feeling that during. Yes, but it's not.
But there's definitely been some. Well, there's been some time passed since we were with these characters in the first place.
That's what I'm saying. So they have been at the tower doing, and that's sort of as we catch up with them, they're talking. You do see some of this passage of time. For there to have been a civil war in Kyrian breakout, like time has passed a little bit. That didn't, you had sort of the embers or the sparking of that when Rand, Matt, and Perrin are there, but for it to kind of full-fledged break out into war, it's been a little bit of time, and so it's happening. This I kind of think is happening while they are in that sort of 3 month period,
right?
While Rand, Matt, and Perrin are there, but then it's also towards the latter half of that. If I guess is the best way to. I know there's probably an exact time out there. I don't actually know, but I think it's sort of that latter half of those month, maybe
Gotcha.
3 or something.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, okay. So we get to know some more about the dynamics. I mean, last time we were with Nynaeve, we talked about her being accepted and going through that whole process. So remember that that Elaine and Egwene are novices,
right?
Okay,
right.
So they're novices, and they've got a lot to learn. They accepted Nynaeve because she is a wilder, and she is strong, very strong actually. Like when you talk later on, when we get further into this, we can talk about like levels of strength and things, but like. It's been mentioned that like these girls' potential is great, that they have this super great potential, and Nynaeve definitely is one of those who I love. Nynaeve. Nynaeve is one of my favorite characters actually, and even though at first kind of like the tugging of the braid gets to be, she's just so I love her because she's so blunt and just says what's there, and even when she's trying to guard her tongue, she sometimes can't. She legitimately, and Sir Matt. I think you can back me up on this. Reminds me of my sister. You know what I mean? Just in how like my sister talks and just the way her mannerisms. And
things.
I
can see it. I can definitely see it.
Yeah, like she'll. I mean, she'll let you know what she
thinks.
will.
Yes, she will. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so let me think here. Some of the other things that are happening at the beginning of this. Yes. Okay. So. Min is sitting there, so we're getting to see these. So Min, right? I mean, we're seeing Min interacting with Nynaeve, Egwene, Elaine. All of our these girls are there in the tower. Min is there because the Aes Sedai think she's interesting, right? She can see things, has these sort of prophetic visions around people, and that's something that they want to study or have access to. So she's there, and they're gossiping about. Els Grinwell, who was one of the the farmer's daughter that Matt and Rand passed on their way,
right.
in Eye of the World, who shows up there at is at the tower and is studying as a novice or whatever, and has a huge crush on Galad, who is super good looking.
Right.
So.
Right.
And Egwene, they're all thinking about him. The warders are out there training, and Galad is super good looking. Gawain is there. I mean, Elaine is very close, remember, to Gawain. Galad is a half brother not as close, and sort of like when people talk about how good looking he is, she's just I can almost see her like rolling her eyes and then talking about how awesome her other brother Gawain is. But Galad gets all the attention.
Yeah, this is when the thirst starts. All right. I mean, I was like, I texted as I was like, okay, man, geez. I mean, they're just talking about but yeah, again, right. It's just I think it's funny, right? They're talking about all that stuff. So like there's kind of some tension really between all these kind of characters, right? Like Nynaeve and Min get into it a little bit, right? Where she kind of even then uses the power to kind of like, kind of summons a wind and kind of like knocks her like off her chair or whatever. Yeah. And so like there's definitely some like tension building between them.
Yeah, there is. And there's even stuff where like, I mean, Nynaeve is not settling in super well or being accepted by the other accepted. Getting into fistfights and things. But then you're right. There's even this little bit of tension because we'll just jump right to it. I mean, Elaine is interested and asked about Rand a couple of times. Mm-hmm. Min has been talking to them about what she's seeing. They are interested in these two river boys, in particular Rand. And Egwene, as far as they know, is like they're close. As Rand's like essentially like girlfriend. I mean, You would think like that they're in a relationship.
I mean, that's what what it feels like. Yeah,
right. But they're not. And so like it's one of those things like you're almost feeling that out. You're kind of like, are they? It's when you see two people who are friends and you're sort of like, are they just friends or is it more than that or whatever? Because I think all good relationships, that are intimate like that start with good friendship and stuff. So they're just checking to see like, is she really interested in him in that way? And is that some of the tension you're kind of referring to?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and they're gossiping, right? Like at one point, like they're gossiping, right? Min whispers to Elaine that Nynaeve got into a fist fight, right, with the accepted. And then like when she overhears them gossip, right, that's when she like gets angry enough to channel a wind, right, that knocks Min off her chair, right, like, and then she says, you can turn me in if you want, like for doing that or whatever,
right? Yeah, it's more just like a catch up on who Shiriam is, the mistress of novices. I mean, you're learning about the warders, you're learning about the dynamics between novices and accepted. The fact that Min is there, that she still has those viewings, that's a reminder. They're talking about channeling and not being guided and not being not burning themselves out. That was a big thing. So as they're kind of playing around with the power in their room, like Nynaeve is warning them to be careful, like you could burn yourself out, like it's dangerous. You like we need more time and training with this, and these girls are just sort of like, we're good, we can do this. So yeah, we're kind of getting caught up on all of that, and that's when Leandrin Sedai pops in here and just burst into the room, and she's of the Red Aja. We kind of learn, again, going back to the start of this book, learn about her, and I mean, the Red Aja right now as a reader, in our mind, are they good? Are they bad? I don't know. What do you think, sir?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard them mentioned a couple of times, and some people have been like, well, the Red Aja. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, they're still Aja. I mean, they're still, I would have to kind of imagine initially. Well, you'd think initially they're good. I mean, obviously this, we're assuming everyone's read all the chapters so far. Well, Leandrin does turn may not be so good.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. In this batch of chapters, we learned that Leandrin is not. This is not good. So let's just talk about that, because she comes in here and she deceives these girls, and she gets them to believe that Rand and Mat and Perrin are in trouble, and that they're in danger, but that these girls can help. It's crazy. Like it's what you look back and it's like, how did they not? I mean, you're in a tower full of all of these, other Aes Sedai. What the trick that she plays on them is to make them believe that they are the only ones who can be trusted to help, because that these boys are special. Whatever Leandrin does or does not know, they know a little bit about Rand, Mat, and Perrin and their significance, and so you really don't want anyone else to kind of. Like, it's good that they're not at the White Tower in their mind. Like that, I think it's like they're safer away from the White Tower, and now they're in danger. So you're trying to logically piece this out, right? And Liandrin is coming to you saying, "Hey, I can only trust you guys because you're friends with them, but I know that he's in trouble, that they're in trouble." So she's able to convince them to travel all the way to Tarmon Head.
Yeah,
to use the ways.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what happens. I mean, there's a lot more you learn about Liandrin. There's all these little indicators that what you start to think is
real quick. Also, Liandrin mentions the Black Aja, and they all freak out like, why?
Right. That's something that's scary to say. That's not something they're supposed to be talking about.
Right.
So, let me see if I can find here. So, Nynaeve threw her hands up. Perhaps you can say something to convince her. She told Min. So Elaine, I don't want to mention this part because this is important for later on. Elaine, being the daughter heir, is super worried about coming on. She doesn't want to miss out on the action. So even though she's been told about the Black Aja, Liandrin is sort of like, we got to go. Elaine just told us that she's bringing up, and actually at this point, earlier I'd kind of talked about some stuff that happens a little bit later on in these batch of chapters. But she suddenly brings up Rand, and Min, it talks about like the viewing, so that is mentioned, but it's just subtle, I guess, at this point. But regardless, Elaine is interested enough in that she knows this could get her in trouble. So it's sort of like, not even just with the Amyrlin seat, but her mother, who's queen. So it's a big deal that she decides to go on all of this. Let's see. Yeah, Nynaeve and Elaine worry that Liandrin, a member of the Red Aja, may have unpleasant plans for Rand, right? They're puzzled at the idea of Moiraine and Liandrin working together. So what's pitched to them is that Moiraine needs their help, and they do kind of trust Moiraine, and they're thinking, okay, maybe Liandrin was there with Moiraine, maybe there was some, connection or that they talked or whatever. And Min, let's see. Elaine and Min return, having eavesdropped on the conversation from the other room and determined to accompany Nynaeve and Egwene. Min tells them that her viewing gives her a sense that they should stick together. Nynaeve starts making plans for the departure, and Egwene privately continues to worry about Rand. So just more of the dynamics, too, so you understand a bit about the White Tower, because I don't think I talk enough about the Aes Sedai and the White Tower. Except that are not necessarily supposed to be in the novice quarters and hanging out not with novices, but Nynaeve is, and she's very new here, plus she doesn't really kind of fit in. So when Liandrin comes in here, she splits them up, and she tells Min and Elaine to, peace out. She wants to talk with these Emond's Fielders. And I think that's also another sell. It's not like whoever's in the room we're going to trust, but specifically Liandrin wanted to talk to Nynaeve and Egwene. So that sells it a little bit more too in their mind. Like, okay, you're talking to us. The other two were just eavesdropping. So,
okay,
right, okay, yep. So they go through the ways, and again, we get the whole spookiness of the ways. Essentially, we learn more about them. It's definitely not. It's scary. Liandrin though can navigate them, which I guess should have been kind of a red flag as you're reading this. I think once you figure out that Liandrin has set them up for this trap, that you look back and you go, okay, yeah, a lot of this didn't make sense, and we should have maybe saw this coming, but we fell right into this just like Nynaeve and Egwene did, because she's somewhat familiar with the ways. You know what
exactly. I mean? Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not, the ways are not something that everybody knows about. So the fact that Sheena kind of knows about it, right? I mean, it's okay. That's kind of interesting. I mean, what's going on there?
Right. So yeah, so in chapter 40, basically they arrive there in Tarmon Head, and this is when Liandrin tries to hand them over to the Seanchan, and this is a pretty crazy moment. Okay, so Nynaeve, I want to get your reaction to this. When Nynaeve just goes, what I would say is, those moments like I oh gosh, I'm gonna break form here. So Dragon Ball Z,
right.
when you used to talk about like the channeling and the sort of like the leveling up or whatever.
Right.
I cannot wait to see what some of this looks like in a TV show, because Nynaeve just they're caught here. They're in this trap. Nynaeve is super angry and upset. The High Lady Suroth is there, so this is the Shanchen. Liandrin is handing these girls over. We learn more about the Shanchen and that they don't like Aes Sedai,
No.
and they don't like anyone really who can channel that isn't collared. So there's some tension between Liandrin and High Lady Suroth, but she's brought these girls and is supposed to. I mean, this seemed to be a setup. This is a trap to get these very powerful channelers to the Shanchen. Why that is, I mean, I think that's still a question that you maybe have, Sir Matt, right? Like, what the heck? You know, why is she bringing them here? But they escape. So Egwene is captured. Min is captured. Elaine and Nynaeve get away, and it's just like I think it's a big credit
real quick too, right? I mean, we
Nynaeve.
should talk about the collar, because Egwene gets that collar,
Yeah.
right, and then she's alarmed that she can't really do anything with it on, right? It's almost like some sort of holds in your power, right? You can't do anything.
Right, that's true. So it's you're caught off guard, and that's a really good point. So if Nynaeve is closer and she's the one who they surprise and put that collar on, boom, instantly dunzo, you can't do anything. So then it's up to Egwene to have that awesome power moment where you're kind of saving people and causing some chaos so people can get away.
Right.
But it is that Egwene is right there and is collared. And it's Nynaeve who gets furious and then is able to kind of, escape. But it's just a really crazy. They're in a crazy situation. We didn't see it coming. I remember. Did you see it coming?
No.
Did you actually think that
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Because and then it is totally a surprise when Liandrin turns out to be kind of bad or whatever. It's like, whoa. I mean, like, because right. She comes in and she's got news, and at this point we've only met like good Aes Sedai. I mean, we've heard some people say like, oh, I don't trust them. But like,
Yes.
Tom Maryland talking about not trusting them, but you can just see like, well, when you deal with the Aes Sedai, they cause trouble. But, then we've also heard about like, well, the White Cloaks, right? You think about them and they're kind of like, well, on one hand, they seem to be good, but at the other hand, they also cause a lot of trouble. So, but again, those are just like big orders, right? We've yet to meet somebody like a specific person in the Aes Sedai that has been like,
yeah,
like double, I don't know what's the word like two-faced, right? I mean,
yeah,
right. I mean, the only other thing you could think of is Selene, right? Who Rand keeps saying, "Wow, you remind me of an Aes Sedai," and she's just crazy upset about it.
Yeah,
but I mean,
yeah.
that's right. I mean, that's it. That's the only other person we've met.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, okay, I guess here's another question since we're at this point. And this is just reaction, just whatever you think. There's no right or wrong answer to this. But what did you think about Egwene's experience having a collar on? And so just to kind of, I'll let you think about that for a second. So, in the Shanchen culture, a Suldam is a woman who controls a Damani. Damani are those who are collared or leashed or whatever, and it's this device that is put on them that basically they can't do anything unless the Suldam allows them to do it. They're at their beck and call, sort of, and they are kind of servants. Slaves, if you will. Seriously, like it's they have to do what is said, and that Suldam can cause them great pain if they don't. So, I mean, just thoughts on that. Like, that was it was a pretty crazy experience for.
Well, exactly, yeah. Well, like the biggest thing is that then you just think about like, well, then she's unable to do anything, right? Like she wouldn't be able to channel to try and save herself. She wouldn't be able to do anything, and so then you just kind of like, it's kind of like, oh, hey, because at this point, it's like the people who can channel are just it feels like, okay, well, they're pretty safe, right? Like, we've yet to see somebody, I mean, outside of like Lews Therin in the prologue, who can channel, not have that as kind of like their backup. Well, now it's like, oh, we've got like something not necessarily of total equal power, but of something of somewhat equal power in a way that could actually render them useless. So that's definitely like, oh, if they have this device, right? That's a pretty. I mean, that it's
game
playing
changer.
field's a little leveled. Yeah, a little leveled.
Right. It does, and that you're right, because you start to learn like, okay, these who could challenge the Aes Sedai? Seriously,
exactly,
like,
right?
No one. Okay, wait. We just showed up here, and there's this new thing, and that's also what Robert Jordan does that I love is he knows what's coming, and that's just what is fantastic about this. And has mentioned Damani, has mentioned some of this that's going on there on Almouth Plain, and we know a little bit about it. It's been referenced with the White Cloaks before. Remember, we had that big conversation about White Cloaks last time, or maybe the time before that. So he knows where this is going, but yet is just bold enough in his writing style to say, nope, here's this new thing, check this out, and this is what I... like, he does seem like the type of writer who is an architect, who has this built, and is just like, boom, boom, boom. I know how I'm going to counter this, like the strength of the Aes Sedai. I get that they're super powerful. Who could challenge them? What would, why would anyone, they're bound by, it's hinted that when they're in the tower, they're talking to Nynaeve about what it means to be an accepted and what it will mean when she is full Aes Sedai, and the oaths that you have to take that sort of protect mankind from them being super powerful. But now you have these Seanchan who are not from this continent, and they are not good. They don't seem I'll say they're not good because they just collared Egwene, and I love Egwene. Okay, so that makes me mad that they did that, and it definitely is a major sort of, it's a point of growth for Egwene. She's a novice right now, and she's just learning how to channel, and it's like as a Damani, she goes through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and is hurt a lot, and really understands the consequences. You know when you get in that life or death situation, and like a kid doesn't understand that walking along the side of that cliff, like what that can mean, right, and how dangerous it is. But if you've fallen over a small cliff and you didn't like die, but you have sort of like it's 10 feet or so, broke your leg or something, you're like, oh boy, that'll kill me if I get too close to that. Like Egwene is now understanding that I gotta be like, the power can be used in all sorts of crazy ways, and that if misused, this is how destructive it can be, and then just also, what I would say is like an evil thing in the world. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it is. I mean, they don't know like the sheer significance of their actions, right? And what it could lead to. Yeah. So, So I mean, it's just crazy, right? I mean, because, it's like now as the world expands, right? And this is what I think this is why, as you said, Robert Jordan has these characters kind of level up. I think it's the world building, and this is like one of the things that he's told to be really good at. He does really well, right? Because it's like, well, we're gonna need this. We're gonna need, at some point, you would need something to kind of challenge, like the channeling, I guess, mm-hmm. right? You know, and so I think it's really interesting in the last 2 chapters, right? Essentially, Rand goes to use the power because at this point he's been using it, and I mean everything's gone pretty well. And then the Aes Sedai, it's kind of like, well, he's just like, well, we'll just channel, right? It'll be fine. Okay. Well, now we are starting to get essentially some sort of challenge to that, to be like, well, channeling isn't the end all be all. Okay, it doesn't necessarily guarantee you this like free pass, like this get out of jail free card.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, there's going to be way more to this. People who maybe are more powerful, or rules, or other, like this collar, the Seanchan, exactly. So everything seems to has its counter. One of the things Robert Jordan's been praised for is that like his magic, and like the magic that system that he kind of creates is really good and really interesting. And when there are checks, and it's like, okay, yes, this person can do that, but here's how you can counter that. It's strategy, and that's why those strategy games sort of, this lends itself well to that, because, it's like you don't have to it's not just power on power. There are other ways And again, I cannot wait until you learn more about all of this, because there's just so much more, and it just keeps building and building and building, and it's really neat. And so, to help us kind of with the rest of this, there's the biggest thing. My biggest takeaway from reading this portion is that Egwene is greatly increased in the power, and she gets a lot of practice using it. She finds that she has a strength in Earth, one of the 5 powers, and that it's typically strongest among men, but she's very good at it, and she starts to kind of train in how to delve the Earth and seek out minerals and pull those up and things. So that's kind of cool, interesting for Egwene, learning about that. But then there's punishment, the culture. Rena, who is kind of holding, is her Suldam, and is holding her collar. Did you catch the part too where like you can leave the collar?
Yeah, well, she thinks that she thinks Egwene could be like, she sees the power in Egwene because she's like, wow, she could end up being really valuable to me.
Right, exactly, and she's a great prize. And so it's like, if she does a good job, this sounds terrible to say this, but essentially, and people talk about the problems with Wheel of Time. They talk about some of the things that aren't as good or that were hard to kind of read. This is one of those things that is hard to kind of see Egwene go through this. Let's just be honest about that. It's terrible to see her treated in such a way. It's almost like she has a shock collar on her, right. and anytime she does something wrong, she's struck with extreme pain. And so but yet Rena just sees it as in like, I'm training what is not even a human. They don't see them as human. They treat them like an animal. And then again, it's animal cruelty. If you even go that far, it's just terrible. It's awful what's happening.
Or slavery. I mean, that's another,
exactly what it is.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Exactly what it is. And so it's like, okay, so she, one of the things that was interesting, so you can leave the collar there, and you can leave, and they can't touch it, they can't lift it, they can't do anything to it. And you can't get it off. She can't get it off. She can't even use the power to figure out how to do that. It hurts her. And when she tries to attack her Suldam, whatever attack she sends on her Suldam is rebounded on her, and she ends up hurting herself. So it's just, there's really no way to get out of this. So that's all, kind of going on. Meanwhile, Nynaeve is trying to figure out how to get it off and how to save her friend. She doesn't leave. They are chased down, and she and Elaine are able to get away. By the way, Min is there still with Egwene, trying to help out as best she can, but she's basically told, like, if you're good and you sit over there in the corner and you don't do anything, you're fine. We're not going to hurt you, etc. You're just going to, stay there. Boy, if they knew what Min could do, and if they understood
that she has these like kind of other prophecy stuff that she can see in visions. Absolutely.
Yeah, that would have been bad. That would have been really bad. What happens to Egwene is so bad that she's given another name, Tuli. Like she's called a different name. Her name is taken from her. I mean, this is it's crazy. It's despicable. It's terrible. And so anyways, that's going down. And the other thing is that Rena is also, I think I said this, but like hoping that to the Empress or that to the Blood or whoever is above her, that she can gain glory and honor and renown or whatever through her Damani, through Egwene. As you said, realizing that, she's powerful and we can do a lot with her. You know what I mean? So that's something that she's kind of thinking about, and that sucks because that means Egwene is someone they really don't want to give up and that they're going to keep a close eye on. But don't worry, because Nynaeve is out there, and Nynaeve she's awesome. She's a boss, but she's trying to figure out how to save her. Right.
Well, Nynaeve, she does. I mean, she does. She kind of Nynaeve. This is a good Nynaeve moment, right, where she basically just gets to come in and kind of, like save the day. Well, I guess the question is, do we? Because the way the chapters in this go is kind of weird, because you have this Egwene Nynaeve chapter, right? And then you go back to a Rand chapter, but then you go back to the Nynaeve Egwene chapter, right?
Yeah, I figure we just table the Rand chapter for later,
right? Okay, yeah, because then the rest, because Right, because then the rest is Egwene, Nynaeve, yeah. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird that it's even in there. Like I would have just had it sectioned afterwards, but whatever. Okay. Because to me, what's really exciting is after Nynaeve comes in and rescues her, is when they're on the run. Right. I think that's kind of a really interesting part, right? Where they're talking about they're trying to figure out we need food, all this kind of stuff, and then Nynaeve's yelling at Egwene like, "Hey, we don't steal," and Egwene's like, "Well, I mean, we gotta do what we gotta do, right?" Well, type of a thing, yeah.
Yeah, you mean when they're running from the Shanshan? You mean like right. Elaine when they're
right?
When they're
trying to yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Elaine, yeah. Not
not Egwene. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
But they're working towards that. So you're right, and it's funny, it's interesting, not funny, I guess, but that Elaine, who is from royalty, is having to kind of they've got to make it. They've got to figure out what to do here in Falma. The big thing, the big takeaway there is that everyone they spoke to was very afraid of the Shanshan, and it's because that they have Damani, women who can channel, and they use that power against people. They'll hurt you with that power. That's a big deal. Plus, they have soldiers. They've got all sorts of other things. They have the
so the Damani that are mentioned. The
Damani
in almost an odd way is the reverse of a warder, kind of.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess it's sort of. I guess if you could say that the Autumn is a bond, so, but it's really it's this collar, it's a device that they're using. They're not actually creating a bond, and they're not using they're not controlling them in that way. They're so kind of that person is the Damani doesn't have an agenda. It is not trying to say that woman is not saying, okay, I want to destroy that building. It's the Suldam and it's the Shanshan who are saying this is a weapon. These are women who they have is a device that they know if I put this on a person who channels, I then can use that person for whatever I want.
Well, can't Moraine do that with, say, Lan? Can't she force him to kind of do whatever she wants?
They do say, and that is mentioned
because that's kind of what she said last time.
She did. She said I haven't really compelled him to do anything.
Right.
So they don't do it though. I mean, it's not something that you should do.
But theoretically, they could.
Yeah, I think they can. I think because sort of what she's explaining to Lan there is that instead of him seeking the shadow and dying, she's not going to have that. So she has done something to their bond that when it's going to pass over to somebody else, right, and then he will have to seek that person out. He may desire to go end his own life or follow Moraine to the grave, but she's not going to allow that. And it's not exactly the same, but I see what you're saying. It's a similar idea.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I don't like the idea of saying that they can compel their warders to do exactly what they want to. They don't really do that. I mean, could they? I think, I'm just going to say possibly. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. So, based upon what Moraine said there with Lan. I mean, clearly, he would want to go die, but she's saying, no, I'm not going to let that happen. Well, wait, how can you do that? Well, she has a bond with him. And so from there you infer, well, okay, she can compel him to seek out another sister who his bond is passed to. You know what I mean? That's kind of against Lan's will. I mean, he's got to go do. That's something he agreed to do, though. So he agrees to the bond. It's not like they,
right? Yeah, I was just thinking about the power of the bond itself. Is
and
similar?
I could extend the conversation to other things, but I'd be spoiler. So I'm just.
I gotcha. Okay, that's fine. All right.
Yep, but it's a good question though, because you are trying to figure out what's the relationship between what the Shanshan are doing and then what the Aes Sedai are doing, because they've got Damani that they've brought with them. We learn, Egwene is in sort of this compound with other Damani, and Rena is telling her, sort of how you should behave. If you don't, I'm going to rename you. She gives her a story about how the collar was created and how that all went down, and also what happened to other Aes Sedai who didn't listen. Yeah, so it's a bit crazy. But back to Nynaeve though, and just her trying to go around and find people that can help in this situation. She's able to really, she can't even talk like a ship captain into helping them, kind of get away. Bail Doman, by the way, who we mentioned, I think last time or the time before. Yeah, right. Captain Doman,
as his favorite.
I like this guy. I like him a lot. She seeks him out, and he's ready to go. Let me know when. She's kind of saying like when the time you'll know when that time happens. Don't leave. Wait for us. They talk about payment. They talk about service and things like that. So he's pretty cool, and he's there kind of waiting. He agrees to wait and possibly and help them. So I think that's kind of where we leave it, right? So
right.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me see here. Is there more? No, I think we decided to kind of stop right there because the next batch of chapters we're gonna the action. Well, actually, that's it, right? Oh my gosh, that's the last part.
That's it.
That's all the. That's it. We're going to the end of the. We're going to the end of the book. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, it really picks up.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So, oh gosh, it's always fun for me because I am.
Again, the next
back to this is
the next episode will be what 44 through 50, which is the end of the book. Yeah.
Yeah. So really neat. But yeah, they're setting up here. Nynaeve and Elaine, they're trying to get in there, sneak in, see what they can find, figure out like how to help Egwene, and you don't even really know what you're up against. I want to say this too. So Nynaeve is smart in that like I'm not just going to rush back in there and channel and try to take on the Shan-Chen by myself. That's foolish. You're just going to get captured yourself, right? And they have other Damani there who, you're going to fight 50 other Aes Sedai, 1-on-50. Or something. I don't know the exact number, but she's got to do some investigative work, and she also has to have a plan for escape, and that is really where we'll leave it, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we already kind of answered one pigeon, right?
Yeah. I think we just wanted to kind of talk about some of the comments over on YouTube and
that's
in
right.
general.
Yeah, let's pull that up. Yep.
Yeah, there've been some interesting ones just about the sequence of the show. We've been kind of talking about maybe how things are going to break down there. So we're going to shift back, I guess, to some show conversation. And again, anyone who wants to send us, I'm going to start calling it a pigeon now. Send us a pigeon at thehornofvalir@gmail.com. And if it's about the show, if it's whatever, again, the discussion thread on Patreon is still always open, and people can go in there, and I'll pull some of those to kind of talk about. If you have comments on the Portal Stone, go leave us a comment about the Portal Stone. If you have comments more about the Shan-Chen and their culture and this, what's happening to Egwene, I feel like I kind of shortchanged it a little bit because it's just awful. It's kind of an awful experience, and it's kind of hard to read. It's kind of hard to see Egwene going through all of that. So that's all I'll say there. But yeah, so we decided to bring up some of this stuff in the YouTube, some of the YouTube comments, because we've been looking at what do you keep, what do you cut in the show, and if you're interested in this, great, stick around. I'll make this short, but the general conversation, Sir Matt, has been about how do you take the Eye of the World and the Great Hunt, which we've only got 6 or 7 chapters left in this, so you've experienced it in a significant way. Like how, and we're not, by the way, just so you know, on YouTube at this point in time when we're recording, we have not finished our sort of like our march through as Sir Matt learns more about books 1 through 3, we're going to try to, as he learns about it, he and I are going to talk about how that's going to influence and impact the show. So just to make that really clear. But yeah, we've been talking about like, how do you combine this? How do you turn Eye of the World into 4 episodes, which is essentially what we've heard is going to happen. More so than that, we've even heard that they're going to introduce some new spring stuff, which you and I, all you know is that that's a book before.
It's a prequel that I have been told by many people best not to read until afterwards.
Yeah, and some people will say otherwise, and that's okay. I don't really think there's a right or wrong. I think it wouldn't have hurt if you did. Also, I think it's fine. I just like this. This is the way it came out. It's the way Robert Jordan, kind of wanted you to read it. So, but yeah, that's a lot to pack in episodes 1 through 4, and so that's really what we've been talking about over there on YouTube. Is how do you split that up? What do you do with Tom Maryland's character? What do you do with Land and Nynaeve? Like like these big reveals about channeling and what the girls can do. Like, how in a show do you introduce that? So we thought we'd give you just a little taste of that and kind of respond to some of the comments. You got some of those maybe pulled up?
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess first we should kind of say, I guess for maybe those of you guys who haven't checked out our YouTube, what we've kind of seen is that it seems like the pace they're going to be going on is maybe 4 episodes a book, which seems like a lot. But I guess the more I think about it, right, that would be roughly, if you figure 50 minutes ish per episode times 4, right? So, you're over 3 hours. Well, that would be roughly like a movie, right? Like, like a extended movie, a book, right? Which is kind of like, which is, I mean, kind of crazy, really. So let me pull up, I guess, is there a specific chapter, or is there a specific maybe episode you want to talk about, or just kind of,
I guess really just those first 4. I mean, like whether it's episode, 1 through 4. Just in short, I guess I'll do, just it's kind of a plug for our YouTube, because I'd love for folks to come over and kind of interact with us there.
Exactly. So like one of the episodes we did was big question: are they going to show the prologue? Right in the first episode, are we going to see that Lews Therin chapter? And we had been kind of saying it. And this was really kind of got a lot of people talking over on our YouTube. Some people were saying, do you spend time doing that, or do you maybe show it in a dream? That's some of the things we were saying. This lady Heather Nicole said, "Hey guys, I had thought of how they might include this. Think of the scene where Tom is introduced and he's giving a preview of his talent by reciting the story of the prologue to the villagers, right? Like maybe Tom is kind of saying, this would be an awesome way to weave it in. So maybe Tom is the story he's telling us, right? We see this gleeman, and he's kind of telling the story of Lews Therin, right? Like, ooh, that would be like, kind of cool. And then you wouldn't have to actually show his face, right? Which wouldn't be, for, I mean, he's so casting and stuff like that.
Yeah. You can hold off on that. Yeah.
You can hold off on that, right? Or Rand has some dreams, right? We talked about maybe you have some of that stuff show up in his dreams. He doesn't really understand what's going on. And so so that was like there were definitely some comments on it. Some people said one advantage to that would be exactly, you wouldn't have to show his face. On the other hand, there's a small issue, there's some important parts in the prologue, right, that you would need to see in the story, and you couldn't really have those spread out, right, because they come up later, when Rand fights Balsamon, or uses the power, I guess, right at the end. He doesn't fight Balsamon, but where he uses the power at the end of Eye of the World, right? And so that's definitely something to take into consideration. Another thing, let me pull up here.
While you're doing that, let me comment real quick on the Lews Therin thing, because this was fascinating. And again, we're trying to get sincerely, we want more people to come over to the YouTube channel, because we're doing some really fun, interesting stuff there, and we're interacting with a lot more of the fandom. So again, here's the horn on YouTube. Go check it out. Subscribe. The video I think I would send you guys to is the one Sir Matt is just referencing, which is, will Lews Therin the Dragon be in episode 1 of The Wheel of Time? Like, how do you do that? And I think Rafe Judkins has kind of hinted at that. Yeah, you have to have that. It's so important to everything else, but it's like, how do you do it? How do you execute it? Is it through Tom? Like, some folks are kind of saying you don't show it right away. It's not the opening. It's not the very first minute of episode 1. It wouldn't make sense for people. And some people are saying you start maybe. So Unraveling the Pattern is Lauren, who has a YouTube channel as well and is covering Wheel of Time, talks about the idea that maybe you would want to start on the road there, where Rand is noticing this cloaked figure that is following him. Kind of set it up like that, and then even when Moraine tells the story of like Manetheren, maybe you don't tell that right away, or if you do, you weave in some of the Lews Therin stuff, or you just show up at the Wine Spring Inn and Tom Maryland is telling stories. Although typically he's talking about the Great Hunt and he's talking about the Heroes of the Horn, but maybe you could use some of his storytelling to highlight what happened during the breaking. And it is important because, like we just found out in this batch of chapters, it's important to understand why the Ogier why the longing comes on, what happened to them during the breaking of the world, that everything kind of stems from that. The world was broken. Why is it that men can't channel? You need to know, you need to understand how dangerous it is for a man to channel. So I think you need to have it right out the gate. I think you need to show us that Lews Therin went mad. Why do we call him Lews Therin Kinslayer? There's a reason for that. And then you're like, yeah, I definitely don't want my main characters to be anything like that seems awful. How you do it though is fascinating, and I would love to be sitting there at the studio, not giving my 2 cents on it, but listening to the conversation around what are the ideas on how you pull off Lews Therin Telamon, and how do you bring him in, and does he reoccur?
Yeah. And another episode, we haven't posted this episode, I don't think yet, as have we, the possibility of the Nynaeve land stuff. I don't think we that episode has gone up on our YouTube. Yeah, exactly. So kind of teaser for that. But coming up, we talk about, well, if you're on this pace, right, and some of the episode titles have been kind of leaked, I guess, or you supposed leaked or whatever. We talked about, well, the episode 6 might be, if you're into the Great Hunt, it would probably be the episode where you see Nynaeve's trials, right? And, in this upcoming YouTube video, Ez and I talk about the idea of, well, that might be kind of weird adapting that to TV, because in the book, you've already read all of the Eye of the World, and you're like now halfway or like into 3/4 of the way into a Great Hunt when Nynaeve, goes into her trial and she sees that potential life with Lan. But in the show, if you do that, you've only been 6 episodes. And so it's going to be like, well, how do you do that? Right? Like, is she going to be like in kind of love with this guy who in a show time would feel like we just met? Right? Like, and now she's having this like future of us living together and all this kind of stuff. And so they're just, they'll hit different, right? Because in the book, we've like, there's been a lot about it, right? Like Lan, hey, you could like go, her and Moraine talked about your bond. Like he's, there's just a lot, right? Like, so it's just different in a TV show. So that's some of the stuff we talked about over there on YouTube. And, I think it's pretty cool. I think you guys should check it out and check out some of those YouTube videos we have about the episodes, and let us know what you guys think too, because I think sooner or later we'll get a TV trailer.
Yeah, and I wanted on that note, I wanted to mention to our current listeners and to future listeners, which is kind of crazy to think about, because we anticipate people coming into this, and it's hard to kind of think about that when you're current and you're in this. But like as you go over there, I've talked to people on the Daily Trolloc Reddit. I've messaged a few other Wheel of Time creators here recently, and I've had to let them know that the reason our show analysis is the way it is because like when they want to weave in like, oh, maybe it's this plot line from book 4, book 5. It's like, well, we can't. With Sir Matt,
I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I don't do that. I'm going off a really simple idea of just maybe you take book 1 and then wherever we are in book 2, we're kind of adapting that. So when you go look at that, just keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that the show may already be out, and those are old videos, and go look at the great stuff that we're doing, which is, by the way, we're doing summaries, recaps. We're also doing kind of like a look at, and I'll mark everything spoiler and non-spoiler. I've been trying to do more of that over there because YouTube will be a little bit more spoiler-ish. We're doing sort of like what we're describing. What is a shadow spawn? What does it mean to be Damani? What does it mean? Like we're doing sort of tutorials on that. So, but we'll mark it, trying to create a system where it's like, maybe you want to know about Damani, but you haven't got to that point yet in the book. Well, you need to know that you need to be at book 2 and this portion of the way through it before you watch that, unless you want to be spoiled. You know what I mean? It's really kind of tough because you're navigating a whole group of people who are coming into this, but some people want the spoilers, some people want to know that stuff, so you mark it as such, and there it is. But it is fun, and I've reached out to people over on our Patreon to say if you want to help in any of that, or if you have scripts or artwork or whatever, and you're into that kind of stuff, reach out to me, send me a message on Twitter. It's at @womprat_2m. That's my Twitter handle. It's probably the best way to maybe directly get a hold of me, or send me a message on our even our Twitter on the Horn of Valir. That'd be great too. I can message you there. That's where I'm messaging other Wheel of Time creators, or send us an email at thehornofvalir@gmail.com.
Yes, absolutely. So, all right, guys. Well, I think that's it for us for today, right? So
that's pretty much it, man. We're gonna go back and we'll cover some of that stuff where Rand and party kind of show up there in Falma on Toman Head. We'll talk more about that in the extended edition.
All right, guys. Well, we want to thank you for answering the call. In our next episode, we're going to be discussing the end of the Great Hunt, which I believe is chapters 44 through 50. So, yeah, absolutely.
Exciting. Yeah, exciting. So if you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave a comment, or send us a message or a pigeon at thehornofvalir@gmail.com.
We will see you soon. And remember that the grave is no bar to our call.